Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Jenny Koch, and I'm a member of the consultant team working with the City of Charlottesville on the Cville Plans Together process. I work for Roadside in Harwell, or RHI. Also joining me on this webinar tonight is Latoya Thomas from Brick and Story, who is leading the public engagement effort for this project. So you'll hear more from Latoya shortly. Before we get into this, I wanted to thank you all sincerely for being here and being with us tonight. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and we really appreciate you taking time to join us. I want to note up front, this was not how we planned to meet with you originally to kick off these conversations. We wanted to be with you in person in your neighborhoods, talking with you, with your neighbors, with others. And so we look forward to doing that with you in the future. And we know there's a lot of people who can't access the webinar. They can't participate because of technology or time constraints or just the sort of mental strain we're all going through now. So I wanted to confirm with you that we are working on other ways to seek out input from others. But thank you again for being here and giving us your time. So I just wanted to go quickly through our agenda for this evening. We're going to tell you, first of all, what is Cville Plans Together? If you're on this webinar, you've probably got some awareness of that, but we'll go through it. We'll talk through the process and schedule for this effort, and we'll give some more details about the current step in this process, which is the first of several points that will be coming to you to collaborate during this effort. We'll wrap up at the end with some information on how to stay involved in the process and keep collaborating with us. And we'll take questions at the end. So we'll talk for about 20 or 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So we might hold off on answering most questions until the end, but we want to note that you can submit them throughout the presentation using the Q&A box or the chat box, and we'll respond to them at the end. We may respond to some in the middle if some clarifications are needed. At the end of the presentation, during the Q&A, we'll also open it up. You'll have the chance to click on raise your hand, and we can actually unmute you to speak your question out loud if you'd like to do so. So at this point, I would like to introduce Latoya to give you a little more info about herself and then talk about the process.
Thanks, Jenny. And apologies if you hear a phone ringing in the background. This is the beauty of virtual engagement and webinars and working from home. So again, I'm Latoya Thomas. I'm the principal and founder of Brick and Story, and I'll be leading the public engagement effort on this project. I'm very happy to have all of you here tonight. So to kick us off, what is Cville Plans Together? So Cville Plans Together is really an opportunity for the Charlottesville community to participate in updating the comprehensive plan and really the future vision for the city. For those of you who have maybe heard some of the early efforts around this process, we are really focused on equity and affordability. We're going to talk some more about that tonight. We're also going to be maintaining that as a consistent point of conversation throughout this entire process, because it's really critical to how these various plans get developed over the next several months. So to dig in a little bit deeper, what is Cville Plans Together? So Cville Plans Together is the name of, again, the opportunity and the process that we have developed in order to get through three primary goals of this effort. The first is the update to the citywide comprehensive plan. For those of you who are familiar with the comp plan, you might know that the comp plan gets updated every couple of years. Most cities, including Charlottesville, do an update by statute. The citywide comp plan addresses a number of issues across the city, including housing, economic development, transportation. And so we are going through the process of completing an update to that plan. In the process of developing the plan, we're also going to be developing an affordable housing strategy plan. That plan will actually build into the comprehensive plan and create a unified strategy for how housing is developed and maintained as affordable for Charlottesville's residents going forward. Finally, An updated zoning ordinance will be the final piece of this process. The zoning code ensures that development takes place in a clear, effective, and equitable way. And so that is really the final piece of this process. And Jenny will go through the schedule next in a couple of slides. So you'll be able to see how this process plays out between now and the end of next year. A few things I want to emphasize with Cville Plans Together is that this is a process of collaboration with the entire community. Tonight's webinar is one of many engagement moments and opportunities with the Charlottesville community. This is just the beginning. We are using this as one of several tools to get the conversations going around this process and what we are considering and thinking about in this process. We want this to be collaborative. We want to hear from all types of people and voices throughout the city of Charlottesville, particularly around not just the comp plan, but the affordable housing strategy. So we look forward to talking with you further tonight and going forward.
Sorry, everyone, trying to unmute myself and I keep advancing the slides. Let's see here. Before we get going, there's a question about how many attendees are present and whether it's possible for people to see how many people are there. I'm happy to tell you we have 35 participants on the line right now, and we'll work out it for future webinars how to make sure everyone can see that. So my apologies that that's not the case right now. As LaToya said, I'm going to go through the schedule. So she spoke about the different pieces of this project, and we just wanted to show sort of how that looks over the next couple of years. And so this is the schedule for the process, which is currently planned to extend to the end of 2021, next year. And as you can see, the top bar there is the green, the housing strategy. Dark blue is the comprehensive plan. You can see the housing strategy feeding into that toward the end. And then light blue is the zoning. So once the comprehensive plan goes through the process of review and approval through the Planning Commission and the Council, the zoning rewrite will commence. So we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. As LaToya said, throughout this process, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to participate in this as much or as little as you want or can, but we hope you're ready to participate with us. The schedule shows these little orange bubbles at the bottom, and as the big orange arrow shows, those are the times we'll be looking to come back to you and get your input. But we're available throughout this process to answer questions and take your comments. I want to note each of these orange bubbles is not one meeting. It's a set of engagement with you. It's a set of activities, much like the set that we're going through today and in the next few weeks, with ways for people to learn more about what's going on and ways to give your input. Sorry, y'all. So LaToya talked a bit about what a comprehensive plan is. It's a document that describes and illustrates the city's sort of visions and goals and guides decision-making for matters related to land use and development, as well as other areas such as community facilities, housing, transportation, and more. And so once adopted, it's the official statement of the city's intentions and policies in those areas. So in order to ensure that there's a regulatory mechanism for actually implementing the plan, they have to be reflected in the zoning ordinance. So we are working with you to update the plan, and then we'll work with you to update the zoning. I want to note that as we're looking at the comprehensive plan, updates to the plan will include updates to the current chapters, as well as potential addition of chapters, which I'll talk about in a second. LaToya noted the city is required to review the comp plan at least every 5 years. When we're looking at the time frame of the actual plan itself, what it's looking to do, the goals and the strategies in the plan range from the very short term, we'll say 0 to 2 years, to mid-range, 5 to 10 years, and then 20+ years out. And so part of what we'll be looking to work with you all on in this process is to say, you know, where are the priorities? How do we prioritize these different needs? And of course, recognizing in that there's a lot of connections between these different topics. You can't really talk about housing affordability without talking about access via different transportation modes, for example. So they're all really connected, and we'll work to ensure that those connections are described well in the document, and that they're described well when we're talking with you and getting your input, and that any strategies to address needs are coordinated in the plan. This is the current map of future land use in the city of Charlottesville. So I just want to talk a bit about like, why should this matter to you? I think a lot of you already probably are really involved with the planning processes, but some of you maybe are not. So I just want to reiterate that this land use map is the basis for the citywide zoning, or it should be, which dictates, what can be built, where and how, and the comprehensive plan can really set guidelines for funding and priorities in a variety of areas into the future. So if you think back to the slide that showed the different chapters of the comprehensive plan, those topics are all covered in the plan. And so, if any of those areas are important to you, and I'm sure they are, there's something for you in this plan, or we want you to be able to feel that ownership over this plan. So it's not just a tool for the city, but it should be a tool for you and others to point at goals and say, this is what we want to achieve, and how do we work toward that? Looking back, so the current plan I just showed the map from is from 2013. And the Planning Commission undertook a review in 2017, 2018 of that plan, and they did start to make some edits to the chapters. And so we're starting from those draft updates, but the reason that they halted the process was partially because they realized they needed a more thorough approach to housing affordability to incorporate into the plan. So that's where we're coming in with the housing affordability effort that I'll speak about in a second. So I just wanted to reiterate, we're not necessarily starting from zero on this comprehensive plan at all. We're picking up where the Planning Commission left off in 2018, and we're moving forward from there. And so what might be changing in the plan? Latoya talked about, we are focused on equity and affordability, but what does that mean as for how those things are included in the plan? If you look at the plan document, and I don't assume that everyone has or will, but each chapter has a topic, let's say transportation, and it has a vision statement that says sort of the overarching goal for what we want to achieve as a city in that area, and as a set of goals beneath that vision statement, and a set of strategies to reach the goals. And so we're going to be looking at ways that equity can be more considered in those chapters. We'll also be updating the land use map and adding new chapters. We know we'll be adding a community engagement chapter that will talk about, what do we want to have as goals and guidelines for community engagement and planning processes into the future. And then we're also adding an implementation chapter. And that implementation chapter is really important. It is sort of the key element that says how the actions will take place into the future, which actions are we using to address the goals, and how might they be phased, in those short, medium, and long-term phases. And so as part of that, we'll be looking to work with you to say, what are the measures or metrics that we want to put into here to say how we can measure the success of this plan and actually reaching the goals. In addition to those new chapters we'll be adding, we're also open to the possibility of there might be other new chapters or new topics that need to be covered in the plan. We've heard a lot, and obviously are all thinking about community health right now, and I know food justice, access to food, healthy food options has really been coming to the surface as well, just for example. So, we're looking to work with the community to determine how other emerging areas might best be addressed in the plan. So stepping to the affordable housing piece a bit, we just wanted to talk a bit more to tell you what we're looking at in this area. So the goal with this is to work with the community to define what are the key affordability related issues that are most critical to address in Charlottesville, and then defining strategies and a plan for addressing those to improve housing affordability and reduce inequity. And so you can see here, we're looking at a wide range of issues related to affordability. And we've been reviewing past studies and looking at data about these issues, but it's really important that we talk with the community to see what are your needs and your goals and challenges and priorities in these different areas and others. And so, though we might sometimes talk about the Affordable Housing Strategic Plan as a separate document, it's going to be incorporated into the overall comprehensive plan. You know, the strategies that come out of this effort, they'll all be part of the comp plan. So there might be some strategies in there that we will implement through zoning, for example, and those would need to be reflected in the zoning rewrite. I also want to touch on, you know, we know it's kind of nebulous. We could talk about affordable housing or affordability, and we're not giving that a specific definition at this point. And I know that might be frustrating, but the reason we're doing that is partially because the plan will probably include strategies and goals for a range of affordability levels and addressing different types of needs related to affordability. And so, you know, we're using your input and data and studies to help us understand how much these different issues need to be addressed. So speaking of data, we just wanted to show a few data points related to sort of how the population is changing and how maybe affordability has been changing in Charlottesville. And so this is just one example, looking at how incomes have changed in the city and how populations have changed. So if you look at the graph on the left, it shows you that there's been a population increase of about 5,000 people between 2010 and 2018. If you look on the right, you can see that in that same time period, you know, Charlottesville lost about 1,500 low-income residents. And so we're looking at, you know, what does that mean? Are there issues there that are related to some of these housing affordability needs? You know, is there something that we can be doing to address this? And so we're looking for trends similar to this and this one, as we're looking at, you know, how do we prioritize these issues based on both data such as this, and then also the real lived experience on the ground, which we need to get from you. This is another example of how this affordability issue is playing out. So you can see the line on the top shows the median cost of a rental unit per month, and the middle line shows the median household income. And so as you can see, though the median monthly income rose over the past several years, the median income households cannot afford the median monthly rent in the city. So, you know, even though that household income is going up, it's still not quite enough. So that's obviously an issue, and that's one of the things we're talking about and thinking about as we move forward. So these are just some examples of the types of data we've been looking at, but I want to reiterate that if you go to the website, which is cvilleplans.together.com, and you go to the process page, if you go to the housing page, you can see a larger set of data related to all of those housing affordability issues that were shown on that, that web a few slides back. I just want to touch a little bit more on zoning. Zoning will be the final piece of our process, but a very important one. And so, you know, we've gone into what zoning is a bit. It's a set of regulations that shape the built environment. It dictates, you know, where buildings can be built, what they look like, what types of uses can take place on different parcels. It divides the city into different zones with different uses. So it should be used to implement the land use and design principles and priorities described in the comprehensive plan. However, we know that that's not really the case right now in Charlottesville. The 2013 comprehensive plan was not really incorporated into the zoning ordinance fully. So that's one issue. We also know, for example, there's issues related to needing to clarify processes and requirements for development. Another issue that we're thinking about and talking about, and we'll keep talking about with you and learning more, is we know that land use planning and zoning have historically been used to create and maintain racial segregation in many places, including in Charlottesville. We're not the first to point this out at all in the city, but as far back as the early 1900s, there were sort of ordinances and decisions in place that sought to really purposefully segregate people by race in certain areas of the city. And that has led to some lingering impacts that can't be ignored in this process. And that's something that we'll keep talking about with you, as I said, as we move forward. I just want to show one more piece of data related to how does zoning and housing relate, housing affordability. And so, as you know, housing or space within Charlottesville is finite. We can't just keep getting land and building on it. That's not how it works. So looking at the land that is available and what is currently zoned for residential uses for housing, 70% of that area is designated for single family residential uses only. And so one reason the growth of the housing supply might be restricted is that such a high proportion of residential areas are zoned for lower density housing. So this is just one example of how we're thinking about those connections between housing and housing affordability and zoning. So we'll talk more about zoning once we get later in the comprehensive plan update process. We currently anticipate we'll get to that point by later this year or early next year. And along with the rest of the process, there'll be a lot of opportunities for you to weigh in along the way. We just wanted to give a little more information about where we are right now. Pardon me one second. So this is our first few weeks of community engagement and collaboration on this process, and there's a lot more rounds to come throughout 2021. But for this current stage, we're looking at what you see as priorities and goals for the future. As mentioned previously, the comprehensive plan sort of sets out a vision for each of those topic areas, as well as several goals. And so we're asking you in this stage to tell us about your priorities and goals through the survey, through the small group discussions, through your calls and emails. And so we'll be using your input at this stage to help us look at the existing visions and goals and seeing how might we adjust those to better align with the community's goals and values. So at the next stage, we'll be checking in with you on our interpretation of how those edits might take place. So you've been listening to us a lot, thank you. And we'll talk to you a little bit more, but we wanted to just take a break for a second and do a poll to see if we can get some of your input. So we do have a survey posted on the website that gets into more detail than this. So I hope you'll be able to fill that out as well. But just for a quick question, we have put on here the chapters of the comprehensive plan. So we know these might not be the only chapters in the end, and these might not sort of explicitly cover all the topics that are in your head. But just to get some quick input from you, we are asking you to think about, from these, what are your sort of top 3 priority areas when it comes to achieving, an equitable future for Charlottesville? So Latoya will put that up on the screen shortly. There you go. So then you can just select what you think are the top issues, and I'll give you a minute for this. Latoya, I'll let you determine when you think we've got a quorum of poll answers.
All right, looks like the voting is slowed down. I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll.
Okay, so let's see what we've got. All right, housing, top, that's not a surprise at all. Environmental sustainability, transportation, land use. And, you know, importantly, people chose areas all throughout this. And that's something that we will be looking to, you know, grapple with on this, is that a lot of these issues are important. All of these issues are important in some way. And so how do we balance these priorities into the future is what we'll be talking about. So thank you for that. And I will invite LaToya to give some information about our process, and then we'll do our Q&A.
Thanks, Jenny. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the engagement process that we are undertaking on this project, and it is quite extensive. But first off, it's always the big question of who's involved, and it's a very simple answer from our end. It's as many people as possible. We want to hear from anyone and everyone in Charlottesville because this process affects everyone, regardless of where you live or what your background is. This process affects you and ultimately affects the quality of life for all residents of Charlottesville. What you'll see on the left of the slide is this diagram that really highlights at a very high level the different subsets that make up Charlottesville. You'll see, I'm going to start from the circle on the left, which is residents. There are a bunch of subsets in the residential bucket. There are homeowners, there are renters, there are immigrants and refugees, there are low-income residents, there are homeless individuals, there are residents who may have been historically disenfranchised or even currently disenfranchised. So we understand there's a bunch of different subsets of the residential population, and each of those subsets has their own opinions and ideas and challenges that we want to hear about. We're also interested in talking with the business community because we know that economic development and business for Charlottesville is a major issue. And the business community is going to have a lot of feedback and ideas around how the comp plan process and ultimately the plan itself can affect their quality of life as business operators in Charlottesville. The development community. We have heard kind of coming into this process that the development community, the folks who build, who develop the land, have had a lot of challenges, opinions, ideas, frustrations going through city processes. Some of that's related to the comp plan, some of that's related to the current zoning code. And so part of this process will also be to hear from them about some of the challenges they're experiencing and figuring out ways the comp plan, housing strategy and zoning code can solve development challenges for the city going forward. The advocacy community, there are a large number of advocates in the city of Charlottesville representing different populations, different interests. So we want to make sure that we hear from all of those groups and understand their ideas and opinions and challenges. The UVA community, UVA, as we've heard from many people, is the gorilla in the room. And we are working, actually our steering committee, which I'll talk about in a second, has a representative from UVA. I also see a question from someone on the, one of our attendees about how the city is going to be working with UVA. So part of this process is actually trying to have conversations with UVA and loop them into this process as well. We know from some early conversations that they are also looking at affordable housing as an issue, looking how to address some of the housing challenges within their own community, to take some of the pressure off of Charlottesville. So a lot of that is still very early on, but the UVA community is going to be a very big part of informing this process, particularly to make sure that this process is one that is equitable for the residents of Charlottesville. Finally, city reps. That is a very big term for your elected officials, your city staff, includes your planning commissioners, your city council, but pretty much folks who are on the government side who are the public servants working and representing residents and other stakeholders' interests. So again, we're really trying to cross as many different walks of life in Charlottesville as we possibly can. Some specific groups in this process that I've highlighted on the right-hand side include our steering committee for this project. We have somewhere between 30, I'm going to say close to 30, 35 individuals representing different walks of life in Charlottesville who are advising on this process. You can check out the CvillePlansTogether.com website for some more information about the steering committee, including who's on the steering committee. City staff, as I just mentioned, we are working with a variety of departments, from the city to help advise the development of all of these plans and updates. The Planning Commission, there was an earlier question posed by an attendee about if the Planning Commission is collaborating on the writing of the comp plan. They are also providing guidance and knowledge about this process and will be advising on this process. Ultimately, the Planning Commission is the body that recommends the final comp plan, affordable housing plan, which is part of the comp plan, and the zoning code update to the City Council for approval. And then finally, the City Council. The City Council ultimately adopts the comprehensive plan and zoning code. And so they are also involved in this process. Why should you participate? The interesting thing with doing engagement really in any jurisdiction is that there are some folks who participate all the time and there's some folks who never participate. And so we want to make sure that it's very clear that it's important for everyone in the city to participate. This plan is for the city, and this plan will really dictate the future of how Charlottesville continues to develop and evolve, how it continues to either welcome residents and business owners and the development community, or how it potentially hinders the ability to welcome other people into Charlottesville. So we want to make sure that we hear from as many different voices, as many different walks of life as possible in this process. It is of the utmost importance, and it is very, very critical to this process that we hear from everyone. If you have friends and neighbors who you know are not involved in this process and not participating, please get them to sign up. Please get them to participate in a webinar or a phone conversation or sign up on the website. We're also committed to sharing periodic summaries of what we're hearing. As Jenny said, this is not a one-time deal, and the schedule that we shared does not show 8 different meetings. It shows several different points of engagement where many different engagement activities will be happening over the next year and a half. So you will be hearing from us quite regularly. We also have made ourselves accessible via the website, and our contact information will be at the end should you have questions throughout the process. And with that, how can you participate? So just to highlight some of the things that have already been mentioned, and then a couple of elements that you might not be aware of. Our website, CvillePlansTogether.com. Most of the information that has been referenced today can be found on that website. If you've not already signed up for our email list, please do so. Jenny mentioned the survey, which is available on the website. You can sign up for small group conversations. Those are a little bit different than the webinars. We will have about no more than 20 to 25 residents, participants in a small group conversation. You will see a calendar for those on the website. We encourage you to sign up for one of those conversations to have a more in-depth conversation with us about this process and how we're kicking this process off and some of the things that we should be thinking about in this process. This webinar is being recorded. The remaining webinars will also be recorded, and then we will be posting the recordings of the webinars on the website for folks who are not able to participate in one of these live webinars. There is a comment section on the website under contact us. You should feel free to leave comments or questions at any time. There is also a toll-free number. This is particularly important for folks who may not have access to technology, whether it be a computer or even a smartphone. There's a toll-free number where someone can call in and get information about this process, very brief message, and record a question or comment. We encourage you to utilize that and to even pass it on to people who you know may not be participating in this process because they don't have access to technology. these are just some of the initial ways that we're trying to reach out to everyone. We are, again, adapting our approach accordingly. As Jenny mentioned at the beginning, COVID-19 has certainly thrown a wrench in how anyone does engagement. And so we are all in adaptive mode. We are going to continue to monitor COVID-19 restrictions, particularly around social distancing, over the next several weeks. We do hope to be at a point where we can start to reintegrate some in-person engagement moments back into this process, but we are constantly monitoring the situation and going to continue to work as best we can with virtual platforms in the meantime. And then you will see the contact information for the, Jenny, can you bring that slide back up real quick? Sorry.
Yep, sorry. There we go.
The website link, the email, which is engage@cvilleplans.together.com, as well as the toll-free number. It's listed here. It's also listed on the website.
All right, thanks, LaToya. And thanks all of you. We do have some questions lined up in the Q&A box, so I can get started on answering those. If you did want to speak to us, just click on the raise your hand button, and we will get to those in 1 second. Let me go through these quick. So there was a question earlier that LaToya answered about whether the audio will be posted somewhere, and we will be posting the webinar on the website. So it'll be the video with the webinar. If there's a need for like an audio only recording, let us know and we can look into that. Cliff Fox asked how many steering committee members are associated or with or employed by UVA, and we have one steering committee member representing UVA. She's the university architect, and so that's the current representation right now. Let's see, this question from Kat Imhoff, who asked, how will the city be working with UVA? For example, if UVA provided more residential housing, it could help increase the existing local housing stock and aid in affordability. And, you know, LaToya talked a bit about, you know, we do recognize the need to work with UVA closely. We know the university president has put forth some big goals for housing affordability. And they have a working group that I think will get started once they're able to with the current COVID situation. So we are monitoring that, and we're talking with those who are working on that at the university. We've had one meeting, and there will be more as we move forward. Let me see here. Let's see, there was a question from Bill Emery about whether the Planning Commission will be collaborating with our team on the writing of the comp plan. And yes, the comprehensive plan will certainly be an effort with our team and the Planning Commission, our advisory group, our advisory committee, and others. As far as you know, the actual writing of the comprehensive plan, I guess I can't say exactly how, you know, that process will go. The Planning Commission has drafted some revisions to chapters from 2018, and we are using those as we move forward. And we'll work with them to figure out how additional edits happen in the documents. Let's see here. Let's see. Okay, let's see. There's a question from Ray Masters about the housing, one of the housing graphics. Let me pull that up here. So Ray asked on slide 14, you know, income and rent both rise since 2010, and that the increase in the gap between those two has widened a bit. And he was just confirming whether he was misinterpreting the chart. And I don't believe so. That sounds like my understanding as well. They're both rising, but the median renter household can still not afford the median rent, is sort of the issue that we were looking to point out with that. If that doesn't answer your question, please feel free to send another one, Ray. Let's see here. Let's see, Dana Trom just asked a question of where can a copy of the current comp plan be obtained? With the new city website, I know things have gotten a bit muddled, but I believe we have a copy of the current comp plan on our website, cvilleplans.together.com, under the resources and then documents and media. If you can't find it there, please feel free to shoot me an email and we'll make sure it's really clearly linked from our page. Let's see here. Follow up from Ray. Let's see, looking at a draft of the current comprehensive plan. Let me read. So I think I'm understanding your question, right? So with the work in 2018, those edits are not reflected in the current comprehensive plan. Those are still draft edits to those chapters. So the current comprehensive plan is the 2013 plan. And we are using the draft comprehensive plan chapters from 2018 as sort of a basis for moving forward here. And then Cliff had a clarification that there may be multiple people on the steering committee associated with UVA. So I'm happy to chat with you more about that, Cliff, and better understand those connections that might exist if we're not aware of them. Let's see, Latoya, is there anyone with their hand raised?
Yes. Apologize if I mispronounce your name. Caetano de Campos Lopez. I'm going to unmute you.
Hi,
Caetano?
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hi.
Thank you. So my name is Caetano de Campos Lopez, as you said. I work with the Community Climate Collaborative, an organization here in the town. I would like to know, how are you planning to consider to include in this comprehensive planning the recently established climate goals of reducing overall community-wide emissions, greenhouse gases emissions by 45% by 2030, and making Charlottesville a carbon neutral city by 2050. So I know that right now a lot of things are going now, and it seems, no, it's a fact, it doesn't seem, that there are many other urgent topics in the table. But as this comprehensive planning is trying to look beyond the now, it's trying to look mid and long term, I think that's appropriate to have a clear consideration of these climate goals in the comprehensive plan. And I would like to know, how are you planning to include that? Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great question, and agree that it's a pressing issue. It can be one of many issues that need to be addressed, and we there is planned for this summer a climate action planning process in the city, I believe. And so we're coordinating with that, or we will be coordinating with them as we move forward. But we know there's existing plans in place, and we will be working with the city staff to make sure those are incorporated into the document. So we are on board. We're right there with you and thinking about that.
We also have a question from Ray Masters. Ray, give me 1 second.
Yes.
I'm going to unmute you. Hold on. Ray? There we go.
Are you there?
Yep, we got you, Ray.
Just a quick question. I've been trying to get an update on the status of the city looking at rezoning and potentially moving the city yard. And the planning commission meeting back in, I think it was December, was canceled last minute. And I haven't been able to see any sort of clear direction on where that subject's at currently in discussion.
We don't have any information about that, or at least I don't, but I'm happy to help coordinate getting you that answer. I'm sorry, okay. I can't be more helpful in that way.
Yeah, I live here in Star Hill, so.
I imagine you'd want to know what's going on. That certainly makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I see there's also a question from you about whether we can get a copy of the sort of draft chapters from that draft comprehensive plan update in 2018, if we can get those sort of posted or available, and we'll work on the possibilities for that, getting those up on our website. Happy to
That'd be
do that.
great. That'd be great.
And we also have another hand raised from Caetano, so hold on one second.
Okay.
Hello. Okay, so thank you for answering my previous question. I have another question that I would like to ask you. One of them, actually two short questions. One of them is related to data. I know that by reading former reports related to here in the city, right? Local reports related to affordable housing in the community and the lack of affordable housing in the community. It seems that when it comes to race or the other demographic information other than income and other than education, when we're talking about race, and in particular, I'm Latino, for example, when we're talking about Latino immigrants as well in the city, I think that those two topics or subjects do not have a lot of data available in the community. So I wanted to know if the comprehensive plan perhaps can also establish for key topics that the community wants to understand better when promoting equity, if the comprehensive plan can anticipate some sort of periodical survey in the community to understand how race is being associated, to better understand, because we have a lot of indicators that suggest that there is a clear connection between race and lack of affordable housing, etc. But is there something that we can anticipate and start collecting data to actually measure and know better how this connection is happening and how we can solve it? That's one question. The other question is, as I'm a person that work in the climate sector, I would like to ask, how are you planning to create possibilities for certain topics to be somehow cross-sectoral or transversal, like touching many other topics or not? Because sometimes I feel a little bit limited that the climate conversation seems to be usually only allocated or placed below environment, period. But also you have a lot of climate justice and energy equity topics that are much more related with affordable housing as well and with equity in general. So I don't know if there are ways for making certain topics to be placed in more than one area. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll answer your second question first. That was something that came up when we talked with the city about climate change and sort of plans with that. Is, you know, is there a way we can show how different strategies or sort of different actions that are in the comprehensive plan are addressing different areas? You know, they're cross-cutting. Transportation, climate change, for example, connections between those, the built environments. And so, yeah, I think we're sort of by nature of the comprehensive plan, there are these stovepipes of chapters, but we're looking at making sure those connections between different areas are clear and that they're considered for sort of mutual benefits for different strategies. I hope that answered your question. If not, let me know. Going back to the first part of your question with the survey, or potentially thinking about how we can institute maybe a regular survey to make sure the city's understanding sort of different impacts on people based on demographics, including race and ethnicity. And I think that's certainly something we can think about, you know, especially with the thought that we're doing this community engagement chapter for the comprehensive plan. I think discussing ways that community input should be gathered periodically, even outside of a comprehensive plan process, is certainly something that could be thought about as part of that. And also as part of our effort, every time we do a survey, including the one that we posted today on the website, we are looking to gather as much demographic information as we can from people. And we know things like income, you know, for example, can be sensitive, but we're hoping people are willing to be open with us and help us make those connections between, you know, some demographic areas, not only so we know who we're hearing from and how we can target our outreach, but to help us better understand how different people are being impacted. So thank you for that.
And I'm going to go back to the question box. We had 2 questions pop up in the Q&A box from Juan Diego Wade. You asked, what efforts we made to provide translation services for meetings? That's a great question. So one thing I will highlight very quickly is on the website Cville Plans Together. We do have a translation button, I believe, for Spanish right now. And we are working to integrate other languages that are commonly spoken, particularly among refugee populations in Charlottesville. So that is the website. For our meetings, we are going to work towards trying to figure out how to integrate the translation services for live meetings going forward. It may be a bit of a challenge with some of the virtual setup, but we have had discussions with the city when we initially started this process about possibly needing some translation services. So we are very much aware of the different populations that are in Charlottesville and the many different languages that are also represented. So we do want to make sure that everyone has a chance to participate. So we're going to be working, whether it's having a person as an interpreter or providing translated documents. We'll work to make sure that we've got resources available for everyone.
Yeah, and I would just note, it's sort of an interim measure. We have that phone number people can call. If anyone leaves us a message in a language other than English, we can certainly, have that translated as well. For us, that might be one way people can provide information, though there's obviously the issue that the message they hear is not maybe in their preferred language. But yes, we are committed to making sure information is available in the way that people feel most comfortable getting it. So we'll keep focusing on that as we move forward.
Martha asked a question about can surveys include demographic information since our segregation issues prevail? I imagine the responses may vary widely from group to group. That's an awesome question. The survey that you can check out on our website, cvilleplans.together.com, actually has a whole host of demographic questions. The questions are optional. We invite all of you to take that survey and not option out of those questions. We want you to opt in to complete the demographic information because it helps us do our job better. It helps us understand who is participating and more importantly, who is not participating in this process. So we encourage you to complete the demographic info. Any future surveys that we do will also ask for demographic data. So Martha, yes, we definitely want to use that data to try to track who is and is not part of this process right now. Jenny, did you want to add anything to that?
Nope, that's spot on.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. I see we have one question here from Peter Krebs asking for, is there a way to include evaluation and measuring of progress in the document, particularly related to community engagement, so the city can measure how well it's doing in reaching the goals the plan lays out? And yes, that's definitely not only for community engagement, but we want to do that for each of the goals. We want to have something that can be tracked to say, here's our progress on meeting this goal. Here's what we've done, to be able to track both for the city to track it and for the community to track it. Any other lingering questions? I'll note while we're waiting for any final questions, please feel free to reach out directly at this email address. They come to me, I see them, and I can give them to the rest of the team as needed. And please help us, share these opportunities as much as you can. As Latoya said, we know you all have networks of people that you know and you work with, or your neighbors. So any help you can give would be greatly appreciated.
One final point is if you joined the webinar late, there will be, Matthew, we see your question right now, so hang tight. This will be posted on the website. I would say give us a day or two just to get the video downloaded and formatted and back up on the website. But additionally, we do have other of these exact same webinars scheduled over the next several days. So if for some reason you joined late and missed the first portion and you want to participate in a live webinar again, feel free to sign up again for one of the other webinars that's happening in the next couple of days.
Yes, thank you. Matthew, sorry, I missed your question completely. Thank you for calling that to our attention. Matthew Gilkin asked a question of, looks like, what are 2 or 3 strategies for increasing the amount of affordable housing that you've seen work successfully in other cities? And we don't have our housing experts with us right now on the call, but I will give you from my perspective, though I'm hesitant a bit to give any ideas of what strategies might be used, because we haven't gotten to that point of saying, here's what we've identified are as the top issues or the issues we'll be looking to address. But I mean, we know that there has been recent moves in zoning to look at, you know, how do we zone for single family residential? You know, are there ways that should, you know, that should be adjusted in some places to allow more density? So that's one. But outside of increasing the amount of affordable housing on the ground, we're also looking at the other side of how can people afford more, sort of giving people that access to opportunity, policies that are aimed at that. You know, programs are certainly something that we're thinking about. And, you know, thinking about in general, just, you know, the city has many different types of organizations that are working on the ground to build affordable housing and make sure people have access to information about housing. And so the plan can also include strategies for providing those groups with more resources or certain types of you know, funding that can aid their efforts. So those are just some of the things I've coming to the top of my head. But you know, we can certainly connect you with our housing team as well to talk with you more about that. We'd be happy to do that. Let's see, there's a question from KR. Can you remind us where the survey is on the website? I would love to do that. If you go to the website and then go to Stay Involved, it'll be there. If you click on survey, there'll be a tab that opens up and it's in there. If you can't find it, feel free to just shoot us an email and we'll get you right to that. Let's see here. And then Mike Parisi asked, is there or will there be an evaluation of the previous comprehensive plan? I'm assuming the 2013 plan, in terms of its effectiveness, regardless of whether one supported its goals. For people new to the idea of a comp plan, it might be informative to know just how much the comp plan created the desired on-the-ground results. That's a good question, Mike. And it's one issue we talked about a lot with the Planning Commission, is that, you know, this 2013 comprehensive plan, there was a lot of thought put into it, a lot of effort, and then the zoning was not completely updated to reflect what is in the plan. So in some ways, it's not clear how effective the plan is, because some things have not come to fruition. But I think there certainly is an opportunity to work with the Planning Commission and work with others to say, you know, what do we know maybe didn't work as well in this plan, and see if we can find some places where those, we can sort of measure the on-the-ground results, as you're asking. So that's something we can think about. Are there any other hands raised, LaToya?
No hands raised. Are there any final questions?
We're right at 6 o'clock, which is great. Thank you all again for joining us. Questions anytime at our email. We're happy to talk with you.
Thank you, and have a great night, everyone. Stay safe.